Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke, and I am joined by regular guest and friend of mine and friend of the show, multiple-time amateur champion, Hunter Starner. Champ. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Luke. As always, I'm glad to be on.
It's incredible having you on the show. We've had you on several times. It's been an honor every time. I got to watch you fight and win one of your several amateur MMA belts for 247 in front of me, which was an incredible performance. You have since gone to train in Thailand. We had you on to talk about that. It's been great. And here you are now, 9 days away from your transitioning from amateur to pro debut. October 15th, you make your pro debut. You take your undefeated record, all of your amateur belts. You're transitioning to pro at Cagezilla, October 15th in Manassas, Virginia. Let's just jump in. You're almost a week out, week and a half out. How does it feel to be at the point where you're ready to make your pro debut?
Feels awesome. You already know, but we thought about making my pro debut all the way back in like January. And then, we took that fight with Cam, and then after I fought Cam, we were trying to get June, and then got bumped back to August, and now finally had opponents confirm like 4 weeks ago when I think this was like official. And yeah, I'm super excited. I'm ready, and it's been a long time coming. At least it feels like it has been. So I'm super excited.
I think in all the good ways and all the right ways, it's been a long time coming in the best possible way. You and your gym, we've talked about it before, I think took a really good developmental approach. You're obviously an incredible talent, an incredible athlete. We've talked about your wrestling background. You're undefeated. First time we talked was now almost a year ago. You were pausing or postponing your pro debut in order to come on to 247. You guys were both 6-0. You and Cam were both 6-0. We talked about how rare that is. A lot of amateur MMA fighters, after 2 wins, 3 wins in amateur, they kind of get excited and jump into the pro ranks. And sometimes that's not a good transition. I think you and your team have really done an incredible job developing you, taking on somebody like Cam. We talked about at the time, I said this on the broadcast, both you and Cam could have avoided each other and said, hey, let's do it when we're pro. Most of the time when people have really, really good amateur records, they start protecting the record. And both of you guys didn't do that. You were both willing to really take on that talent. You recently flew to Thailand. You had 2 Muay Thai fights. One you won, one you lost. Again, really developing your skills. So for you, what is the best possible pro debut result for you? Is it that really great dominant 30-27 all around sweep on the judges? Is it a quick knockout? Is it a fantastic Von Preux choke? Like what would you want out of your pro debut that's really a week and a half out for Cagezilla, October 15th?
I think the best possible result would be just for people who are watching and people who are watching on like a pay-per-view stream, be like, wow, this guy's pretty freaking good. I just want to make it fun for the fans to watch. I don't really care how I win, as long as it's a win, but I want to put on a show because, I'm getting paid to do this now. Me and my coach talked about it. Every time I fight from here on out, it's an audition for a bigger step up into the MMA world. So I want to put on a show. I want it to be fun to watch. And like I said, it doesn't matter how I win, as long as it's people watching are like, wow, this guy's pretty freaking good,
Well, that's been what people have said your entire career. So I assume it will continue in the pro ranks. We've seen just in the last couple years, the Dana White Contender Series in many ways. And that's just UFC. There's certainly Bellator is fantastic. I personally love the PFL because of the tournament and the fact that they respect the tournament. As a wrestler, you've got to love that mindset, the tournament mindset. And a lot of times, just like early UFC, they allow the champion to be the one who builds up the kind of the run through the tournament. We've just seen what do they call him now? The Red King, Roy McDonald. He was in many ways considered the favorite. And a tournament is tough, because a tournament doesn't really care whether or not you're the more drawable, bankable guy. You've got to win. And so hats off to him in retirement, but they can't really script it. They can't really gift somebody a title opportunity. So I think there's a lot of chances out there. But what I was saying about the Dana White Contender Series is we've really seen the fact that when somebody's 5 fights in, 6 fights in, 7 fights into their pro career, it used to be they had to keep getting more fights. But I think Dana White Contender Series in the summer, it just wrapped up with Bo Nickel. I think it really shows that, like, if you're impressive, like you said, 5 or 6 fights in, you can get opportunities that even 4 or 5 years ago didn't really exist. What have you really seen watching what I'll call like early pro, the guys that are 5 or 6 fights in? What do you really see those first 4 or 5 fights being in your pro career coming up?
I would say this promotional fight on Cagezilla is more of a local promotion here in Virginia, and so maybe these first 4 or 5 fights, I definitely want to end up moving into the regional scene, and that would be like a CFFC, Ring of Combat, some along those lines. But like I said, first 4 or 5 fights, that's gonna be, or like I just said, put on an audition. I want it should be a step up in competition. I'm glad this guy took the fight because he's pretty good. A lot of people going in the pros, they kind of milk their fights. At least from what I've seen, not everybody, but they milk their fights, meaning like they don't fight the best guys that they should be fighting at that time. They're fighting guys who, on paper, they're almost guaranteed to win just to pad that record. I don't want any of my 4 or 5 fights to be just record padders. I wanted it to be a risk every time. I want there to be an actual like high percentage risk of like I could get hurt and I probably have a good chance of losing. That's what I want, because that's what excites me, as a fighter. And that's how I feel like most guys should be. But you look at some guys, a lot of their fights, their first 4 or 5 pro fights especially, are record patter fights. So like I said, I don't want to have an opponent who's a guaranteed win for me. This guy has potential of beating me, just like I have the potential of beating him on paper. Maybe I have a little bit of advantage, but I know at the end of the day, he's gonna put up a good fight as compared to a guy who fought 2 amateur fights, probably went 1-1, 0-2, and it's just going pro, and then I get matched up with him. Well, we know who's gonna win that. I'm not trying to be cocky, but that's a record patter. So from this fight, even after this fight, I want each fight to be, pretty skilled opponents to where, we're gonna have to showcase all of our skills, all of our tools we have, so eventually, like I said, hopefully I get moved up to the regional scene, and each fight from here on out, it's an audition, it's a show, it's for fun, it's a performance,
Well,
so.
You are Showtime Starner, that's your
Exactly.
name. And I think you understand it is about putting on a show, something that a lot of fighters will say. In your case, I know it's 100% true. Some of the fans watching this won't know how much of a talent you took on in Cam Allgaier, and it's kind of what you're doing now. A lot of fighters want to say that they want to take on fights that they could lose, but I think you've already shown that when you take on a fight that's tough and a fight that you want to win, of course, but that there's risk there, that's how you get better, because your skill level improves every time. We've talked about how you finished people with BJJ moves that you didn't even really know were a move because you were still learning, but it pushed your skill level. I think that's something that makes, whether you're fighting at the more local level like Cagezilla, and I think that's wonderful. Something 247, Cagezilla, all these guys, it's important to get good fights where you can get them. And you came into enemy territory in Pittsburgh. 247 was a great promotion to put you on. They won really. We were just talking about this. The matchmaker and the promoter, the owner, really want wins within 247 to mean something, so that they're not putting on padding fights. Wherever you go, you want to put on. I know this about you. You want to put on really tough fights. Your opponent, I just looked him up on Tapology when you mentioned his name. He's on a 3-fight amateur win streak, all by finishes, 2 knockouts, and a rear naked choke. And so, like you said, you obviously are going into this wanting to win, but going up against a guy who has a 4-2 amateur record and is willing to take you on. And I think this is a good thing. He clearly sees himself winning. And I think that's a positive thing. You will get better when you fight fighters who want to fight you. Nobody gets better fighting fighters who pretty much know they're going to lose and they just do it because the promoter says, hey, I'll give you an easy fight afterwards. Sometimes the UFC gets in trouble for that, right? Where they kind of and I'm not hating on the UFC, but they behind the scenes, they kind of tell somebody, hey, go out there and take your lumps and then we'll give you a couple easy ones. That's not what you're doing. You're taking on tough opponents. They take you on just like Cam did, just like this guy did, knowing that if they were to beat you, that's a huge deal for them. And that's what every fight, you want every fight to mean something, win or lose, no matter who wins or loses. So it's incredible. Given the fact that the last time we talked, you had just come back from Muay Thailand, from Thailand, which is Muay Thailand. How has it been? Have you focused more on stand-up now that you've done so much more of that? Or has it been kind of focusing on the aspects outside of stand-up since you had so much stand-up in Thailand? Because you kind of gave yourself a month or more of that. So I'm just curious, how are you getting the MM in the MMA?
Yeah, it's been like training for every fight. It's been, I've been focused on a little bit of everything. I would say for this camp, it's been more ground specific, not on purpose, but just because we have a lot of good. I have enlisted 9. I've told you, Colm Smith, he's the head coach for that place, and I've been going to his place a lot because I got good guys to roll with. So why would I not take advantage of that? And then we got my gym, and that's more of a, when we do sparring, we try to focus on standing related situations. But I would say I didn't really do much ground at Tiger, for good reasons. I was focused on Muay Thai and getting my stand up better. But yeah, I would say it's been more of a if I had to choose of like what we've been focused on more, probably the ground aspect, just because I don't know, I've been training that more. I do that every Sunday. I go like open sparring at enlisted 9. I do that, do rolls with their guys, and like I say, it hasn't been on purpose. It's just how it's been, and which helps. None of that hurts, and that's basically kind of the full overall of how my camp's been. A lot of wrestling goes, really.
And that makes sense. It's all about balancing it out. I know you're very cerebral. Not only are you a really talented athlete, but you and your coaches, you make really intelligent decisions, whether it be what fights you take, how you train. It's absolutely incredible that here you are. Yeah, like you said, a year ago, you were also considering turning pro, but it's here now. And it gives you a really good opportunity. I'm looking forward. I feel blessed to have caught on to your amateur career, right? When you came out to 247. But I'm really excited to kind of follow your career, knowing that here you are as a bantamweight, really poised to make this a career. And we talked about that even when you're an amateur. Your focus, your training, the mindset, the fact that your parents are supporting you. This is all positive things for where you need to be going forward to make this the career that you want it to be. And there's a lot of humility at the beginning part, right? The amateur and the early pro. You mentioned getting paid. People would be shocked how little the first maybe 5, 6, 10 fights can be. And that's not an insult. I'm not trying to insult anybody. It's really, people would be shocked how much work goes in. And when people complain and they go to work and they sit on a computer like I do at times and go, oh, that was a hard day and I wasn't getting punched in the face. So it's really cool when you get a special few, the people that train with you, the people that coach you, and who you are, that really wants to make each other better. As the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. So you've already talked about what you kind of want to see. You want to put on a show, your Showtime, Starner. You want to kind of show that you're going to put on the type of fights people want to watch. So I guess we've already covered that, which is just incredible. On the non-fight side, what are you looking forward to the most about making your pro debut? So not getting in the cage, but is it the travel? Is it the people that are going to come, the eyes that are going to be on you? Is it the fact that you're now a professional athlete? I'm using that in quotes because I think some of these amateurs, you included, Cam included, you're training like professionals. And that's been a big change. If people don't understand this, amateur MMA in many ways is an early pro. People are training, they're focused. If people train like they used to for amateur, they're not gonna succeed. There used to be the couch boys that could watch a fight and the next week take it. That's not going to work anymore. The skills have gotten so good that you really have to be almost pro focused when you're an amateur. But outside of the actual cage, what are you most looking forward to in kind of a human side as far as going pro?
Human side, just really just enjoying the experience of this. Not a lot of people, like you said, people get these regular jobs, and I had a regular job, and I might end up getting a regular job depending on how much money I need to get, by the end of the year. But they have these 8 to 5 jobs, and I'm like, man, I wish I did something else. Well, luckily I'm in a great position thanks to my parents, my coaches. I can say, man, I'm doing something I love every single day. It's just the experience that comes with these fights, and it's going to come with in the future with these fights. And hopefully, like you had said, you don't make that much money, which obviously I don't expect to make a whole lot of money. I'm just happy to be making money, because I had these 7 fights where I wasn't making absolutely any money at all. So actually making money for a fight is awesome. So that's a new experience. But going down the line and hopefully keep winning these fights, obviously making more money, getting more eyes on me, attracting a actual I already have fans with extended family, my dad's friends. He has a huge network of Marines and stuff since he was a Marine. But getting just more eyes on me, complete strangers who had never heard my name. Hopefully, I put on fun fights to watch. I keep winning, getting up the ranks, and these in the pro level, and I get a fan base, which would be awesome. That'd be a dream come true. And yeah, like I said, just the experience that comes with fighting, training, that's what I enjoy the most. And whatever comes with it comes with it. But I'm just happy for the opportunity to compete, and I'm happy for the opportunity to actually do it, to where some people they might not have the opportunity to do what I do, but thankfully I get this opportunity, have the support network that I do, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's what makes you special. The gratitude to know that even this moment, your amateur career is now over. You're going into your pro career, even though hopefully down the road you'll look back and be like, man, I'm so glad I'm making more money and stuff. But the reality is, there's a slogan in AA. Let's see if I can get it right. That says, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is the only gift you have, which is why they call it the present. But there's something true about that, that today is the present. It's a present in the sense that these are your only moments, just like people, whether it's in high school or college or a military career like your dad had, or whatever it is, training, what you're doing, you only have now. So to appreciate where you are, I think really makes you special, in the sense that, yeah, the goal is to get quite a bit higher, but you've got to appreciate the now, the training, the grind, because you said it. If you wake up and you enjoy the fact that you get to train as a professional athlete, and that's your job, that's the battle won right there. We've talked, I've read a lot of Olympic athletes. The Olympic athletes that do great over a long time, or the pro athletes, are the athletes that love the grind or the process or the journey, whatever term you want to use. The athletes, understandably, I would probably be that type of athlete. The athlete that is doing it strictly for the result can't maintain it, because at some point nobody's watching you at 4:30 in the morning or 6 a.m. and the result doesn't come when it's nasty and awful. The result comes months or even years down the road. And so I give you, your team, and all those people out there that are grinding with people not noticing them, because that's not, the progress is done there. The progress will come down the road, but the work is put in where nobody's paying attention until it shows up. Wow, there's Showtime. And I think that's the hard part. So I give you and your coaches all the credit in the world for the way it developed you, your mindset. You've talked before wrestling at a very high collegiate level. There's a lot. We'll see what happens with Bo Nickel. He seems like a special guy, but there's a whole lot of national champs, all Americans, whatever you want to say, regional, whatever, that never transitioned successfully into MMA, because wrestling is not, it might be the foundation, but it's not the only aspect. Something I've been impressed about you is you not only strengthen your strengths, you make sure that your previously undeveloped aspects are being developed as well. And so I think that mindset goes a long way. I always bring up Daniel Cormier because I love Stipe Miocic. He's my favorite heavyweight fighter of all times. But DC knocked him out on the feet, right? Which
Yeah.
if you were putting money on it, I don't think anybody would have put that. Not because DC was a wrestler. And so give DC credit for knocking out the greatest MMA heavyweight of all times in the UFC with the most consecutive defenses. I mean, people can argue that, but that's the truth. Now, maybe Francis Ngannou will be, but he's in a contract dispute. Certainly doesn't look like he will be. So I give somebody like DC, who could have just depended on his wrestling. And certainly he was an incredible wrestler, but there he is taking on the greatest heavyweight of all time. And instead of trying to wrestle him, which maybe was the game plan, he ends up knocking him out on the feet. So I think that's the development you and others really follow is you want to be such a good fighter that people go back and go, oh, he used to have a wrestling background, right? As opposed to where MMA came from, where they only wanted to be known as the judo guy or the jiu-jitsu guy or the wrestler guy or the boxer guy. I think people like you really show that like you want to be known as an MMA guy. And I think you're already there. It's so exciting to have you back on the show. I appreciate your willingness to come on and talk. For anybody that is in the area, even if they have never seen Showtime, Starner in action, get out to Manassas, Virginia. I'm sure there'll be a pay-per-view, I would assume. So check in with Hunter, champ about pay-per-view. Always when you're buying tickets or doing pay-per-view, as a quick reminder, always make sure you select your fighter. If you don't know a fighter, randomly pick one named Hunter Starner. But the reality is, one, it helps the fighter. Two, it helps the promoter see what fans like. You already said you want to become a fan draw. Some of that helps because your dad has a Marine contingent that's going to be excited about you. But for everybody out there that doesn't think they influence MMA world, you do. For every Patty Pimbleton, whatever his name is, Patty the Patty, he's a big deal, partly because he's a stud, but also partly because he has the fandom. And it is important to build up the fans. When you go to local fights and you think, oh, there's nobody on here that's known, you're helping them get known. I think of that at 247. We've been blessed to be able to send people to the UFC and to Bellator. And we have a headline from Death Star Worthy for 247 in a couple weeks ourselves. And he's a UFC vet now. But you know what? When 247 was putting on fights where no one had gone to the UFC, those fights still mattered. So for you, for anybody around Cagezilla, even though you said it's kind of a smaller promotion, this fight will forever be your pro debut. And so it's really important for people to support the small. I mean, if you go, I've been to MMA fights where there's 200 people in attendance. That still matters. Even if nobody thinks it's significant, everything matters. I think putting more support from the fans into regional as opposed to just buying the pay-per-view. Yeah, it's great to buy the pay-per-view for UFC, but they don't really need your money. Regional promotions really do. It can make a huge difference if you go to a live show with 2 or 3 buddies as opposed to buying the UFC. So I'll get off my hobby horse on that, but you can't see it, but Champ has been nodding his head. It really does make a difference. It makes a difference for the fighters that are on that card. It makes a difference for the promoters to be able to put on those shows that some people consider small time, but fighters don't get made out of thin air. They come from those promotions. You would never have a UFC if you didn't have these promotions nobody's ever heard of. That's the end of my rant. It's been incredible having you on the show. You are absolutely the guy to watch at the bantamweight division. And I'll say it, at the pro level, starting October 15th, you are the upstart to watch. You are the contender to watch in my mind. The bantamweight division, super exciting. We've seen it become really, really exciting at the UFC level and at other levels too. I think the smaller guys are in many ways more exciting. I think DJ Mighty Mouse Johnson down the road hopefully gets the credit he deserves for putting on clinic after clinic. And even though the UFC was constantly saying he didn't matter, he matters. I think he is the pioneer, really the pioneer in the smaller weight categories. And you and everybody that's basically under 155, at one point that was the lowest UFC went. They owe a lot to the Mighty Mouse Johnsons and Dominic Cruz in your weight division and all those guys that showed how exciting the smaller weight categories guys can be. Thanks so much for coming on the show, champ. Can't wait to have you back on to talk about your pro debut.
Thank you, Luke. It means a lot to me, and I'm looking forward to be back on after this fight. Thank you.
I can't wait to follow you for your career, champ. You've been listening to Luke Basin for MMA Fancast and the champ, Hunter, Showtime, Starner. Thanks so much. Best skills to you.
Thank you, Luke.
You got it.